In a world cluttered with content and polished posts, how do you break free from the pack and build a real connection to your digital audience? Well, one thing's for sure, you won't be doing it using social media like a billboard or a brochure. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because to truly make social media work for you, you're going to need to create real content that inspires, influences, and leaves a lasting impact. And how do you do that? You get comfortable and listen to today's guest. That's how.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Corey Perlman, is a speaker, consultant, and nationally recognized social media expert. He recently launched his third book, Authentically Social, which immediately became a 2024 Amazon.com bestseller. Congratulations to you, Corey. And when not on the road as a professional speaker, Corey runs and operates a marketing agency, Impact Social Media, with his wife, Jessica, and an amazing team of highly skilled digital marketing experts. Really happy to have you with us and welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate that intro, and it's really exciting to be here, my friend.
Well, it's nice to have you here. And I actually saw Corey speak and watched him deliver a presentation, and like a little kid, immediately went out and reached out and said, "I got to have you on the show." So I'm really glad to have you here. And I want to dive right in with you, and I want to get at the typical digital strategy, which you say has an inward focus as opposed to an outward focus. And I thought we'd start there. You could define the difference between the two, and then sell me on one over the other.
Sure. I appreciate that. Well, thanks again for having me and your audience. Hopefully, we'll share some things today that will really benefit them and their business. And to start with that, it's a great first question. You know, it's one of the key mistakes. I try not to write a book unless I know there's a key problem to solve. And what I've noticed in the marketplace is that, as you mentioned in my intro, a lot of social media sites or profiles look like a billboard or brochure. And those all have one thing in common. They're very, like you said, inwardly focused. They're very another way of saying that is they're very self-serving. And so what I want to challenge your audience to do is to be more about serving others. And so how can we make our social media channels others first or others focused? And so really turning that on its head and figuring out a way to add value and be a resource or a guide to both our customers and our prospects. That's serving others.
Yeah. And I like what you said. Welcome to the world of sales, where you talked about the key problem to solve. It actually, we could spend 2 days talking about selling, but that's one of the biggest building blocks is I'm in there for a reason, not to belch and tell you all how great I am, and which I guess is that self-serving side, but to figure out what problem is it that you're thinking about solving, that you're struggling to solve, and kind of tune in there. So to me, what you just said follows a classic sales pattern.
It does. It's so funny, Rob. It's like people always ask, with social media, things are changing so fast. And that's all so true. And they're just like, what's the next thing? And there are so many differences, but some of the rules are still, the fundamentals remain the same. And I bring that up only because you brought up some of those sales fundamentals, talk in terms of their interests. Dale Carnegie is one of my favorite authors. And a lot of what he says, both in the How to Win Friends as well as the sales books is all about relationship building. It's all about, like I said, serving others and adding value. And one of his principles is talk in terms of their interest. So none of this is rocket science and none of this is brand new. A lot of it is old school. We just have to do a better job of it. So you're absolutely right. It's a clear sales philosophy. And if you do it well, you'll see success on social.
Yeah. Well, we see it one-on-one when we sell. We see it when we give presentations. It's that classic whiff 'em. What's in it for me, right?
That's right.
I don't know why a speaker would wait too long to get at that because you might have great content, but first we have to tie it in. And I just think that pattern sort of repeats itself. But I'm going to shift over because I like the fact I'm a guy who's chasing down that term authenticity.
Okay.
And I'm working on stuff of my own on that. I think that is it makes it sound trite to say a hot topic,
Yep.
but the more I dig into it, the more I think how did I miss this for 30 years? Here's what you got to say. Here's who you're going to say it to. Here's the what about it? Here's the make here's how to get the words to line up with the tune. Let's get it authentic. Well, you got a book out there called Authentically Social, so that certainly caught my eye. I think we know what that means, but I think the big question is how did and with somebody listening, walking the dog, sitting in the car, how do you actually do that? How do you convince somebody that you are authentic?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're right. It is a buzzword. In fact, in 2023, it was the word of the year. I noticed. So it's definitely something that a lot of people are talking about. But not only is it tough to get right in general, it's really tough to get right on social because we see so much inauthenticness, if you will, on social media. I mean, everyone who's listening to this can think of 15 examples just in the last hour of what you're always seeing the best look on social, or, as my wife said, I don't know when this is going to come out, but we're near Mother's Day, and all these pictures that you see of, the perfect Mother's Day experience. And she's like, if I'm going to post something, I'm going to show my kids screaming in the background, my dog puking on the carpet, and, a real life example of what's happening on Mother's Day. So, authenticity, but the beauty of authenticity is that when people see it, they gravitate towards it. And what I've noticed over 15 years of running an agency is the reason I'm screaming authenticity so much is not because I think the world needs it. It's because when I see it on social, the engagement comes. You and I talked about beforehand what we look for, likes, comments, shares. And you said to me at one point, how do you get that? And the answer is, what I've noticed is the more authentic we are, the more engagement we get. And the good news for your audience, Rob, is that when I say authentic, it doesn't mean that you have to show your family or you on vacation or anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. That's not what I'm talking about. You can be authentic in business and show different sides of yourself or your business without crossing over to something that's too personal. And we can get into that. And the other side is authenticity is not one size fits all. Just because you see somebody out there who's super engaging, charismatic, and enthusiastic, that doesn't mean that that's what you have to be authentic. What it means to be authentic is to be yourself. There's a lot of introverts on social media that kick butt on social because they're themselves. They're quiet, they're more internal, they don't come off super energetic, but what they say is extremely valuable, and that resonates with the audience. So you don't have to be a certain way, you just have to be yourself. That's the key.
Yeah, well, we're lined up here, and I don't talk about my books and things like that, but I've been writing about this, and I remember when I started really getting into it, and I had this sort of cathartic moment, and I went, you know, the best way for a salesperson, so I'm moving us off social media just for a second, but the best way to be believed is to tell the truth.
That's right.
And I remember I wrote it down. I said, I got it. And then I went, now I need about 50,000 more words. But I think I've cracked the code a little bit. But it speaks to your point, Corey, which is I think sometimes people overthink it a little bit. And they leave we all have our own unique style. And nobody does you, Corey, better than you. And nobody does me better than me. And I think, unfortunately, we start thinking, well, I want to be just like that person. I think and I'd love you to talk about this. My belief is they confuse style with technique.
Mm.
So you're going to go over some certain techniques, and then my style is how I'll sort of express that technique. Do I have it right?
You have it absolutely right. Everybody thinks that not everybody, but people think they got to create a persona um, out there on video or on social. And I don't think that's the case. I think your persona needs to just be who you are and double down on those strengths. I often will start some of my sessions with a bunch of character traits. And that's the style that you're talking about. And I'll ask
Right.
people, when people describe you, which of these traits do they say? And I have people do this exercise. And for me, it might be like, authentic or real or, whatever, some of those words. And for other people, it might be humor, or spontaneous, candid, off the cuff. That's not me. I'm not spontaneous. I'm not off the cuff. That's not how it would be described. So to put myself in that position on social would not be a good idea because I wouldn't come off as authentic, right? So my best things I can do on social is to prepare, but then just to come out there and be myself, right? Be my authentic self. And so it's really important for people to double down on their strengths and avoid trying to do some of the other character traits that you see out there if that's not you.
Yeah, I think the poster child for that is humor. Uh,
Yeah.
how many times? I mean, you're a speaker, Corey, and I'm sure that you use some humor, but if it's not your go-to sustaining interest move, there are literally. I mean, I've written them down. There's literally 40 others, and yet it seems to be sort of the placeholder for so many people going, "Well, I saw a speaker was funny, so I've got to be funny. I saw a social media post that was humorous or clever. I'm going to be clever." And I'm with you. I think that's when we really get ourselves into trouble because we start being somebody that we're not, and boy, it reeks of it. You can sense it right out of the gate.
You totally can, and just not to beat a dead horse too much, but just on that particular part of humor, you're so right. Because then there's different. Once you're thinking about humor, there's a way that you come off as funny. And this is a personal example of mine. When I tried in the past to tell funny stories or be a little bit more comic relief in my social media presentations, it didn't work. Where my humor comes in is more humility humor. Like just as an example, I'll give a story real quick on stage where I'll talk about where they thought instead of Corey Perlman coming, Corey Feldman was supposed to come, and they were hoping that he'd sign movie posters and all this. And I tell this little story, and what it does to the audience is like, all right, this guy doesn't take himself too seriously. Like, this is a social media presentation, but I can clearly tell that you never know where it's going to go, and he'll get a cheap laugh by making fun of himself. That's my style of humor, and that works for me. But going off and telling jokes and doing great storytelling, like my neighbor over here, who's a great storytelling speaker, it's not only is it not me, but it's not going to work. So
Well,
that's
yeah, and we're done with this horse, but I will tell you that everybody's, one of the things that comes fairly easily to me is humor.
Mhm.
However, fun fact about me, I've never told a joke in a presentation. And people are almost disappointed, like, we got some good jokes. No, I don't really know any good jokes. As a kid growing up, I always thought, yeah, that's that awkward thing that people try and do. I was
Right,
never that amused by good jokes. Uh,
right,
like you, I'm just trying to react to the situation. That's what works for me
yeah.
personally. But yeah, it's we got so folks, we're talking about staying within the wheelhouse of what you've got. It'll work. That's clearly something that we're going to keep an eye on.
Mhm.
Tell me some other things. Obviously, going to humor, if that doesn't work, would be annoying. Tell me some other classic mistakes that you see that businesses or individuals like myself tend to make when it comes to social media.
Yeah, and this one blends right into what we're talking about of being authentic. Is oftentimes people ask, which platforms should I focus on? And so using that authenticity rule, the ones that make the most sense for you and your audience. So the classic example, of course, these days is TikTok. And people always ask, should I be on TikTok? And so first I need to know who your audience is. And if your audience is, 25 and above, then generally the lion's share of TikTok is a bit younger. But more importantly, how comfortable are you on that particular platform? How comfortable are you with the very, very fast, high energy type video things and, music and animations and all the things that make TikTok essentially? And if you're not, and it's not a place that you automatically feel comfortable, I can promise you that if you start doing TikTok, and for those of you listening, I put air quotes up there, it's going to come off uncomfortable and awkward to your audience, which is not going to do you any good. So if you have, more of a professional audience like I do, C-level executives, owners, and things of that nature, I feel more comfortable on a site like LinkedIn, where I can still be myself, but in a little bit more of a professional manner. So I think that's one of the things that I would challenge your audience with is not feeling like you have to be on every social media site, focusing on a few and doing them really well, and picking the platforms that are both right for your audience and right for you as well. And that would be one big one for you.
That's a great one. I remember, my three kids, I knew families, everybody was in sports 24/7 all year long. And we were pretty much pick one and let's get good at it.
Mhm.
Let's really practice it. If you want to play basketball, let's play a lot of basketball then. But no, that worked for us. I'm with you. It's funny. I'm so glad you said what you said about TikTok because I always thought maybe I'm missing this thing because my daughter has really been pushing me on TikTok. Well, it works for her,
Mhm.
but I muscled out a few videos and thought none of this is really feels natural to me. I'm losing my authenticity, I might say.
Mm.
Uh, but it just didn't feel right. Whereas, and let's move there. Whereas LinkedIn to me does feel right. And it's just a coincidence. Not everybody has to be on LinkedIn.
Mm-mm.
For me, coincidentally, Corey and I do similar things. We do some consulting, we do some speaking, we do some writing. For me, I've got a business audience. I don't even really want them on Facebook.
Right.
I'm barely on Facebook, but I'm on LinkedIn. So, um, how do talk to me? And this is something I have to, truth be told, I saw Corey talk about LinkedIn, and it really caught fire in me.
Mm.
So, talk a little bit about LinkedIn, about just some strengths, weaknesses, kind of hits, misses, just some tips on LinkedIn for people.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, like you, it's my favorite. It's my favorite social media site, and not just because of ease of use or whatever, or Microsoft owns it. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is where I've seen the most business results and where my clients have seen the most results. And over again, the 15 years of doing this, it's been LinkedIn. And part of that reason we talked about it is audience, but also I think that it's considered the professional business network. So I think people are a little bit more accustomed to doing business on there. And I work with a lot of B2B clients. Again, if there's people watching or listening that, sell a product, things of that nature, then sites like Instagram and even TikTok make a lot of sense. Just so you know, before I go to LinkedIn, the second platform that I would say we focus on most is Instagram. So I would definitely go there next. I agree with you about the Facebook thing. They are losing market share as we talk right now. But a lot of people are going to Instagram. And the joke there, of course, is that Meta owns both. But so if your audience is teetering a little bit younger over the years, say 30 to 50, Instagram's a great platform. And they obviously have the backing of Meta. But going over to LinkedIn, the key thing that your audience needs to understand with LinkedIn is it acts very differently than some of the other platforms. And part of that is the way it generates revenue. It mostly generates revenue through its premium subscriptions. So people pay a fee for Sales Navigator and LinkedIn Premium. Whereas like Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, they make their lion's share of the revenue through ads. So they want eyeballs and they want them quick. When I talk to people about strategy there, it's how many times can you post? How quickly can you post? How many eyeballs can you get? LinkedIn, on the other hand, is more about quality over quantity. They want more longer experiences on LinkedIn. So they're looking for time on site and such. So what I help and what I've learned about LinkedIn is that interactions and conversation are key. So what you want to understand about LinkedIn is that you're looking for people to interact with your content a lot more than people just viewing your content like the other platforms. So when you're looking for engagement metrics, I don't want you to look for likes on LinkedIn. I want you to look for comments. Comments are king on LinkedIn. And so what you're trying to do to work the algorithm, if you will, or get more people to see your stuff, is get more conversation going on your posts. That's the key. If within the first hour, roughly, you can get 7 to 12 comments on your content, LinkedIn's going to show it to more of your audience. The flip side, if you post something on LinkedIn and you get 3 or 4 likes, but zero comments, it's not going to go much further than that. And you're not going to see that type of engagement. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. But here's the big question.
Yeah.
What if you're, oh, I don't know, me, and you you have maybe a slightly older audience that just, come heck or high water, they just struggle to comment. Uh, is there a way of kind of igniting that group? Because for many of us, we have followers and they'll throw some likes up. I listened to you a few weeks ago, and other than saying, "Listen, you rat," when you see it, comment
Comment.
on it.
Right.
Uh, is there another tip or anything to engage our audience to give us those comments?
Yes, and I'll be very frank and fair. You're 100% right. I'll validate you and not make you feel alone. That getting comments is difficult. It's difficult for me and it's difficult for everyone. That's why LinkedIn thinks it's such a big deal when you get comments, because so many of us don't.
Mm.
So, to answer your question, what are some ways to encourage commenting? One is to ask. So, in every post, and don't just say, "Hey, comment below," but like when you share something, let's just say that I shared the 5 tips I have for LinkedIn. Did I miss one? Is there something that you think should be here? I'd love to hear in the comments. So I really would add a question at the end, but a meaningful question to get those comments going. The second thing is, let me be very clear. What they call LinkedIn pods are against terms of service. And what that is if you have a group of people that their sole purpose is to comment on your stuff and you comment on theirs, that's not authentic and that's not what you should do. And that's against LinkedIn's term of service. However, what you can do is ask your colleagues and friends that when you post, please do help start that conversation. And I do that with a lot of my speaker friends. We have sort of a informal agreement that when I see things of theirs, I'm going to comment. And when they see things of mine, they're going to comment. It's not a rule. It's not an every time, but it's more of just, I'm going to pay attention to Corey's stuff and he's going to pay attention to mine. And I would suggest that for the people listening too. Have your squad, not your pod, but your squad of trusted people that you make an informal arrangement with that just says, "Hey, when you see my stuff, would you comment?" And I'll do the same for you because I know it's going to help us both. That helps a lot as well. And then the last one, Rob, I would say is you be very strategic and very careful with this, but you can tag people on LinkedIn posts and LinkedIn will assume that they will comment. And if they do, they will definitely give you a check mark in that box. But you want to make sure that you do that strategically, because if they don't comment and you tag them, it's actually a negative against you. So what that might look like is you post this podcast on LinkedIn and you tag me, and maybe you tag 3 of your friends that you know have been struggling with social media. "Hey, I think you, Stephanie, Mark, and Francis would really enjoy this podcast. Let me know when you listen to it and shoot a comment down there that you listened to it," or whatever. Hopefully that will encourage them to comment and that'll get the conversation going.
Outstanding. The book's called Authentically Social, everybody. Make sure you take a look at that book and don't just get it, don't just read it, put a comment by it. You know the rules. That's what we do here. Uh, I really appreciate that, by the way. I've been it's tough. I will tell you, I comment a lot more on LinkedIn ever since I started really upping my posting game and being so appreciative when I see comments. And so it's actually turned something on in me to go, okay, take a moment longer, get off the like and put 5 or 6 words together and do something nice for this individual. But I think your idea about sort of getting those colleagues and friends. We have for instance, a podcast group, a meetup group that, and the podcasters on that group, we've all made that arrangement. Let's just keep an eye on each other when we see a podcast. Got a moment, listen to it, and it's really helped. But
Help
that's
each other
that.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Support each other. And let me give you a quick compliment there, Rob. You just stumbled on, I don't even know if you heard me say it on our last thing, but what you are doing is the best thing you can possibly do for your own LinkedIn algorithm. And you may have not even realized you were doing it because you were just doing it to be nice and kind. But for your audience, the best thing you can do to boost up the amount of people that see your stuff is to comment on other people's stuff. Has nothing to do with your profile. But when you go out and you spend 10, 15 minutes a day engaging with other people's stuff, going out on other people's profile and commenting, LinkedIn feels like you are scratching their back because you're creating conversation, which is exactly what LinkedIn wants. So that when you go and post something an hour or a day later, they take that into consideration. You are what's considered a creator or a conversationalist, if you will, on LinkedIn. So they want to show your stuff to more people. But if you're not commenting at all on other people's stuff and then you go and post, they just think you're self-serving.
Right.
So they don't show it to as many people.
This is like basic playground rules.
Yes.
You know, when you really think, be nice to your fellow classmates, and
Yes.
they'll be nice to you. Only
Exactly.
the teacher's called LinkedIn, and and he or she is watching. But
Right.
it makes a lot of sense. And you also you mentioned, I think, when I saw you speak, that sharing specific content that's good too, right? Somebody
It,
else's content, not
it
just my
is.
content.
Yeah, it is, but you be very careful with that because technically, look, it's good. It's all good. When you get engagement, or you do that with other people's stuff, it's good. But a share isn't considered conversation as much. So what I want to help your audience avoid is for them to share somebody else's post without any extra content. That LinkedIn kind of deems that as lazy, for lack of a better term, and doesn't give you a lot of credit for it. But if you let's just say that I was on LinkedIn and I saw your post, Rob, and I liked it. So I liked it. Maybe I even commented on it, and I want to share it with my network. If I just share it, LinkedIn's like, well, Rob already said it. So by you just sharing it, you're not really doing much. And you'll notice that when you share, like if I share your thing without any context, it's not going to get anything, maybe a couple likes. However, if I share it and I put up at the top, this is my friend Rob's, post that I recently read. I loved it, and here's why. I'd be curious what you all think, and I'll offer some perspective. Then LinkedIn likes that both for you and for me. So if you do share something from somebody else, make sure you add some content above to create some context around it.
Makes perfect sense. And I will tell you, as an unconscious competent, I have been doing that because when I share my own stuff to a different group, I'm always putting something else on there as opposed to just push it to three other groups. No, something that leads into what I posted. But I didn't know to do that on the shares, doing it kind of unconsciously. But then again, this is your next book title, by the way, something about playground rules,
Yeah,
because it makes sense when you think of the playground rules that are out there of don't just share, have something nice to say
that's
about
right.
what you're sharing. Okay, it makes sense. Quick question. I think I could stay on LinkedIn the whole time,
Yeah.
but I've always avoided going LinkedIn Pro or whatever it is. I don't know why. I'm into Calendly and so many different things. I thought, do I need to be in the LinkedIn Pro? Give me a pro, and if there's a con, but I think it's probably just pros. Tell me why we should, you know, join that LinkedIn Pro if we're serious about LinkedIn now.
Yeah, I would say, the con, candidly, is that you could lose money. It could be a little drained of resources. And that's why I hesitate sometimes blanket telling people to sign up for one of the premium subscriptions for LinkedIn. Because what happens a lot of times is somebody signs up and then LinkedIn just doesn't, become a habit for them. And then 8 months later, they've spent $800 and they haven't seen anything from it. And they're like, Corey, why'd you tell me to do that? So what I normally tell people about LinkedIn's premium is start free, like you are doing now, and start, adding to your game on LinkedIn. You're commenting on other people's stuff, you're viewing profiles, you're maybe sending a message here and there to other people. You're starting to get active on LinkedIn. What's going to happen organically is LinkedIn's going to tell you that you can't do certain things anymore or for the rest of the month or whatever. And that's because you've got the free version. So there's a great opportunity to say, okay, I'm already starting to do certain things. If I want to do them more, I got to upgrade. And that tells me that you're already in the habit of using LinkedIn. So you're going to love Sales Navigator. So that's what I would say to your folks. Yes, all the premium services are great, and you can go look up the benefits, the in-mails, the seeing more profile views, getting seen more. You can use it as a CRM. There's so many benefits. But the key is make LinkedIn a habit first before you upgrade so that you don't lose money while doing it.
Is there a particular package that you like? I've never even looked them over that's just geared towards building your audience.
Sales Navigator would be the one that I recommend mostly because it has all the premium features, plus it has that CRM model to it where you can go back to LinkedIn and see people that you've messaged, people that have viewed your profile, and it's almost like it's works as a sales tool, which again, we're all trying to build our business there, so that makes the most sense. Obviously, there's other premium ones when you have different goals in mind. If you are in the recruiting job world, then there's other premium services for it.
Perfect. Makes sense. Okay. You write about 23 proven strategies to grow that audience. Well, I just outed one of them. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think you've been dripping some strategies up for about the last 25 minutes, but want to cherry pick one or two more just for folks that just want to grow an audience. Doesn't have to be on LinkedIn, but just a tip or two.
Sure. I got a couple of them that tend to resonate, bubble to the surface, if you will, of ones that people talk to me about a lot. One is talk more about your baristas, less about your coffee. And so, what I meant by that strategy is when I was at my favorite coffee shop, people would always ask, "Why do you go to that coffee shop?" And they'd always say, "Is the coffee that good?" And I'd say, "No, the people are that good." And so that's why I use that analogy. But for businesses, it's to talk about your the people that work for your business, the people behind the scenes, or even in front of the scenes. But talk about your team. And there's a couple reasons to do that. One is that the world of social likes it. One of the blanket statements of authenticity is showing real people. So anytime I scroll through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, doesn't matter, X, whatever, when I go through your stuff and I see one that's got a lot of engagement, 9 out of 10 times there's real people. Just FYI on that. Not, stock photos, not pictures of buildings or whatever, but it's people. So obviously your team are people. So that's one. The other reason is people love to see, what's going on. We don't just do business with businesses. We do business with businesses and people that we like. So if you're a bank, you're a credit union, we don't want to just do business with you because you give and take money. It's because, the people, it's the tellers, it's the people that we work with. So show those people, highlight those people. And then one other reason that people don't think a lot about when it comes to highlighting your team is to recruit future employees. A lot of your future team members will check out your social to see your culture, to determine your values, to see if they want to work for you. So if I can go to your social and see you guys have fun gatherings on Friday, you do community service, you highlight employees' birthdays and weddings and births and all that, that's cool. And that's going to allow somebody to say, man, I wouldn't mind working there. Whereas if they don't see any of that and they see it in the guy next door, you may lose that quality future employee. So it's a great recruitment strategy to talk about your team. So that's one of them, Rob. Give you another one?
Yeah, give me one more. I
All
love
right.
that one, by the way.
Another one that tends to resonate a lot and people remember. It's a little more of a general one. Well, actually, I'll give you this one. It's I gave you earlier the opportunity to focus on a few platforms and not have to use them all. That's the good news. The sort of bad news is the platforms that you choose, you need to use all the features within those platforms. So the principle in the book is, utilizing new features favors the bold, essentially. So the quicker that you try these features and use them, the more likely you will be positively reinforced by the platform. So let me give you an example of that. On Instagram, when Reels came out, the short form video, 30 seconds, 25, 15 seconds, started out with 60, whatever. If you started using Reels right off the bat, they would give you better numbers. We all used to see, last year, a couple years ago, Reels, and you'd get like 1,600 views or 500 views, and maybe you only had 300 followers. And you're like, why am I getting 1,600 views? It's because Instagram was pushing that feature heavily because it was new. Now, you said to me that one of your favorite tools on LinkedIn that I recommended for you is LinkedIn newsletters.
Right.
And you said that you were getting a lot of engagement through your LinkedIn newsletter. And you're curious why. And part of the reason why that's happening is that is a feature of LinkedIn that they are pushing. So when you can start using features that the social media platform is actively pushing, you're kind of in their cogwheel, right? You're already in their flywheel. That's what they want you to do. And they're going to show it to more people. That makes sense?
Totally. And thanks for bringing that up. Listen, I am such a fan of this guy that when I saw him speak 3 weeks ago, whatever, he said LinkedIn newsletter. I had a newsletter out in 3 days. Actually, it was a little longer than I guess I had to get the template. I wanted to do it right, but and it instantly did exactly what he's telling you it does. So believe me, this guy knows what he's talking about. Authentically social. That's the book. You need to go get that book. And you might need to stop by his website. We're going to tell you about that in a second because Corey also speaks, and I've seen him as a speaker. I'm pretty tough on speakers. He's a really good speaker. So you got to check that out as well. But now I'm only buttering him up because I wanted to hold him for one more question. uh, Video. I tend to take some of my podcasts and grab 90 seconds of video and put that up there. And there was a time when video was king. I don't know anymore. We have to keep making it shorter. It takes a long time to work. I don't actually see a whole lot of people, for instance, following me on on YouTube. Not that I'm working it real hard, but am I wasting my time? Should we be pushing on that YouTube and video?
Yeah, that's a great final question because it's something that comes up almost every time I speak on social media is when video, should I video, where video? So let me
How
give you a couple
long
things on this.
video? Don't forget that one.
Which one?
How long should the
How
video
long?
be?
Yeah, and it really does depend on the platform. So let me mention LinkedIn. What's so sort of odd, and part of the reason why you might be a little negative on video is LinkedIn. This is not a blanket statement, by the way, but it's general. Um, Tends to not favor video as much as other content. And you might scratch your head and say, well, why? All the other platforms. Well, video doesn't encourage conversation and commenting as much as written comments, right? Like if you and I were going back and forth like on a text message, it would make sense to respond to each other. But when I come out and I do a video, it doesn't necessarily lend to a bunch of conversation. People watch the video, they take it in, and they move on. So don't be surprised, audience, if you go out and you post video on LinkedIn that you don't get the engagement that you were hoping for. Now, I've been quoted before, so I have to be careful with this, as saying that I'm anti-video on LinkedIn. That's not necessarily the case. I do think video is good on LinkedIn. If you do video on LinkedIn, you need to have content, written content above it. You need to explain it and you need to ask for comments like I talked about before. That will hopefully encourage that conversation. There you go on LinkedIn. Moving over to Instagram, obviously, video is very important. Once TikTok came around, Instagram started competing with TikTok. Instagram, as you know, used to be a photo sharing site. Now it's a video first platform. It's an entertainment site, very similar to TikTok. It's literally competing with market share. So if your audience, Rob, is interested in gaining market share on Instagram, then you got to be ready to shoot video and you got to be ready to do it the way that the Instagram algorithm and audience wants it, which is, as you mentioned, very short, which is high energy, which is got music, it's got animation, all that stuff. So you asked about duration. The shorter, the better. I usually say 15 seconds, 30 seconds. It depends a little bit. I know. Depends a little bit on what you're trying to accomplish. But here's my biggest suggestion for those of you, especially if you're my age or older. What I
Corey's
might have
83,
said,
by the way. Just you can't see him. He sounds really good. Where were you? I don't want to guess your age. You called it out though. What
I am
age are you?
46.
Okay, good.
So I would say if you're 40 and above, what I just said scares you. What I just said intimidates you. You don't know about animations and stickers and picking good music and royalty-free images, and all this stuff that you have to figure out for reels. So let me give you the answer to that, just like I do. And this is the secret, if you will, Rob. So my last tip is a secret. I don't post to my Instagram. And I don't suggest a lot of us who are not comfortable with that should either, because we're going to stumble and we're going to fail at it miserably. So you might say, Corey, you're the authentic guy. How can you just say, no, let me be clear. It's me. I'm shooting the video. I'm taking the phone and doing the clip, but I'm handing it to somebody else who knows how to cut up and splice up a reel quickly, efficiently, and the way it should be today, because tomorrow it's something different. So I let the people who know how to do this stuff do it, and I just be the content creator. So if I'm you, Rob, and you say, you know what, Corey, I am kind of interested in being a little bullish on Instagram this year, what I'm going to do is, my goal as you is to create one video a week, maybe even splice that up into a couple, and I'm going to give it to somebody else to post to my Instagram and let them do what they need to do to make reels the right way.
But you see, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll tell you why. I remember when probably 10 years ago, I was at an author's retreat, Barrett Kohler author's retreat, and we had somebody really hammering away at Twitter. And I went, okay, and how many times do we post on Twitter? Like 11 times a day. It's not a big deal. It was like, what?
What?
And people, we were in the next meeting, the guy said, sunny outside. I saw people, tweeting sunny outside. And I immediately sort of fell out of love with, how do I do that and make it intelligent? And then, I learned some of the programs that would space it out and Hootsuite, things like this. But I was never really sold on it. You actually sold me a little bit just by saying, hey, one video, maybe two, but one video a week. Could you do that? Anybody listening could do that. Can you hand it off and get out of the way? That's the next step. But that makes a lot of sense. That's one of the reasons why I tend to like to do things myself, because I like to learn how to make the pie just in case the baker leaves. So, but that makes a lot of sense. I may actually revisit it just because you said that. So you're getting a convert. I want to tell you, I really appreciate having you on, because I learned a ton 3 weeks ago. I learned a ton more right now. I'm pretty simple. I'll grab a couple things and like a dog on a leg. I won't let go. You will never see a post from me again, I don't believe, where I'm not asking a question. And I have never asked a question, really. But it's just logic. It makes complete sense. And I think if I was summing you up a little bit, I would say it's not as scary as everybody's making it when you listen to Corey and you say, what part of this conversation was illogical? What part didn't make sense? I had us down to a playground at elementary school. So logical to me. So I appreciate that. And that's a talent, truly. That's what an author does. That's what a speaker does. We take things that maybe it's been around a little bit, but we learn how to communicate it in a little bit simpler so that people can actually implement it. And that's what I appreciate about you, Corey. I'm really grateful you were on the show. Authentically Social is his book. Corey, how do we get a hold of you?
Thanks, Rob. And I appreciate that compliment. I started my career at teaching car dealers about internet marketing 20 years ago. And if we didn't do what you just said, we would have been booed and off the stage, if not worse. So keeping it simple and making it just straight to the value is kind of what my roots are. And so I appreciate you mentioning that. My website is CoreyPerlman.com for speaking. So Corey with an E, and then Perlman is without an A, Perlman. And then my agency website is impactsocialmedia.com. And like you said, most importantly, if you guys enjoyed this at all, check out the book, Authentically Social. It's on Amazon. Would love for you to pick up a copy. Feel free to let me know what you think of it. I'd really appreciate it. You can find me all over social, pretty easy to find, except on TikTok.
There we go. And oh, by the way, after you listen to this, if you don't put a comment or on a LinkedIn, when I put this up, you're a real knucklehead. You hear me, audience? You're knuckleheads, all of you. Go ahead and do it. Let's do it. Let's everybody do it. And let's not lose one other thing that Corey said, which is LinkedIn is going to reward you for commenting on somebody else's information. I love that part of it too. I was doing it just because I felt guilty asking people. I thought maybe I should do it. Now I know it's a nice thing to do. So good for you. Corey, absolutely great to reconnect with you. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Grateful to have had you on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.